the fact that with Intimidate it can lower their attack. But of course Nils, he's not entering a tournament without any counterplay to Incineroar, right? That would be crazy. So he has that Corviknight. With Mirror Armor, you can throw the Intimidate right back away at that Incineroar. And then also you have that Psychic Terrain with Indeedee Mail to block any incoming Fake Out. So Nils definitely has the chance to do something. Also that White Herb on the Sneasler would of course activate if Intimidate came in. Yeah, it's not so clear how that Incineroar even does into that team.
Well, speaking of Incineroar, it is actually front and center for Giuseppe, paired up with that Blood Moon Ursaluna. And you were just talking about the way to counter it. We're going to have the Corviknight on the field, using Psychic Seal to get a special defense boost up, and that Mirror Armor is going to bounce this Intimidate right back.
Absolutely. So now Incineroar probably doesn't care so much about its attack set, but I mean, still, you probably would want to go for maybe a Flare Blitz. Now that the Corviknight has already consumed its item, Knockoff is not going to do anything, really. Indeedee, though, on the other hand, might be threatened a little bit by a potential Knockoff. So you could just try and go for like a trick. But yeah, I don't think you want to lose the Indeedee right away. So yeah, also Nils hovering over a switch here to Tyranitar makes a lot of sense. That Corviknight, though, really in a good position.
Like
Corviknight, yeah.
Oh, I was going to say, the Indeedee is fast, right? It was holding that Choice Scarf, but as you were saying, actually putting it on one of the opposing Pokemon isn't going to give you a benefit. Yeah,
absolutely not. No, yeah, you don't really need any of the items that are over on Giuseppe's Pokemon anyway. But yeah, I was going to say, Corviknight, one of the very, very few Pokemon that can actually take on an Ursaluna and really take both the ground type and the normal type attacks.
Exactly, it does work very well defensively into the Ursaluna here. We're going to see a few switches on the field, though. The Incineroar is going to retreat. It's the Tyranitar that's just joined us, sets up that Sandstorm as well.
Yeah, so now Giuseppe not going for that knockoff right away, but wants to reposition just a little bit. Now that we have both of these field effects on the field, though, that is definitely what Nils likes to see, playing in both Sandstream and Psychic Terrain, but gives the opportunity to Giuseppe to bring in a Pokemon. It is that Dragonite. So even though Corviknight will be able to get up a bulk up right away, with Haze, yeah, sure, you can try and set up the boosts from bulk up once again, but you will never be able to recover that Psychic Seed.
Oh my goodness, look how little damage that did into the Tyranitar. Wow. That's incredible. I mean, when the Sand is on the field as well, that gets a special defense boost to those rock types, so it's going to put Tyranitar in an even better position against a special attacker like Ursaluna.
Yeah, so only one Pokemon takes damage from the Sandstream at the end of this turn, but it is so meaningful because now Dragonite loses the effect of its ability Multiscale, which would have halved any incoming damage if it was still at full HP. So I think the first couple of turns, Nils can be pretty happy, but now is the turn where, yeah, maybe Giuseppe, if he can get off that big Haze, then it is a little bit more difficult for that Corviknight to run away with the game.
Not this turn, however. It's just going defensively and going for a Protect away from that Brave Bird that was coming its way. Ursaluna can retaliate with the Earth Power, does a decent amount of damage, but that special defense boost from the Sand really paying off here. The Rock Slide comes through, of course, not going to connect on the Flying type thanks to the Protect, and we'll do a little bit of chip damage to the Ursaluna.
Yeah, nice play there by Giuseppe. It's one of those, okay, I know that you know situations. So he knew that, of course, for Nils, Dragonite is the threat right now, right? The Ursaluna, well, we saw how much that Earth Power did. It's still a little bit of damage, but there was always the option for Tyranitar to maybe Terrestrialize into flying, so you're not even sure, is Giuseppe just going for that Earth Power, or maybe is he a little bit scared of that to come out? So instead, Nils wanted to target down that Dragonite, but yeah, clever Protect, but now, of course, this is another opportunity for Nils to just go for a double target into that Pokemon.
I feel like Dragonite can't do a lot of damage either, so this might be the opportune moment to go for that Haze, just kind of neutralize the threat that is that Corviknight with the boosted Brave Birds, and quite rightly so, get that Ursaluna off the field. It's really doing not a lot of damage to the Tyranitar, and it can normally not do anything to the Corviknight either, so bring in this Golden Go instead, and there comes the Haze, resetting all the stats on the field.
Yeah, really important to get rid of all the boosts on the Corviknight because, yeah, while bringing in Goldango, it is... that might be enough together with a Rock Slide. A lot of damage coming out from that base, but it's actually the knockoff into the Goldango. Big play by Nils, predicting that switch or at least covering for it. Wow, one-hit knockout on the Goldango.
He's controlling the terrain, he's controlling the weather, he's controlling the match. Fantastic play by Giuseppe, I think, making that switch, but an even better read by Nils. And I actually like going for the knockoff there because even if, you know, the Ursaluna had stayed in, you would have got rid of the Assault Vest, leaving it a little bit more vulnerable. So a brilliant, opportune moment for Nils to seize control in this game.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was about to say, okay, without those boosts now with the haze, it is tough for that Corviknight to deal with the Goldango with the power trip because the base power is now so low. But you don't even need it. You don't need to have a Corviknight to deal with that Goldango because now Ursaluna comes back in, and just looking at the lineup here for Giuseppe, there is not really any Pokemon that can touch the Corviknight, especially if it gets up another one of those bulk up boosts.
Exactly, and it's not like you can bring the Incineroar safely in either. It's not going to be able to intimidate with that mirror armor in place. It'll just send it right back. Tyranitar is going to have to take all of these scale shots coming its way.
Yeah, that might be tough.
It's got all of them. It's got 4, not quite managing to get the 5th one for the potential knockout. But Dragonite will at least get a speed boost to its advantage. But if something like a Rock Slide is coming through, or even another Brave Bird, that's going to get the knockout.
Yeah, that's curtains for that Dragonite. Of course, if it managed to get the knockout here on the Tyranitar, then maybe, yeah, the positioning would look a little bit better here. But, yeah, following up with the Blood Moon into the Tyranitar is enough to knock it out, right? But the Corviknight is the real threat.
Yes, no wonder what Nils' last Pokemon is. We might have had a sneak peek earlier. There we go. Thank you very much, Nils, for showing it to us. It's going to be that Excadrill in the back that wants to benefit from that sand, but Indeedee also can potentially come in, provide a little bit of support, perhaps. Yeah,
so now you got to think about, okay, if I bring an Excadrill, of course, it would be in a prime position to just go for an Earthquake against that Incineroar and Ursaluna Blood Moon. But of course, you would have to take that Intimidate, which you don't really want to, and you don't really have to. Even if the effect of Sandstorm runs out, Excadrill probably still faster than both of Giuseppe's Pokemon. So instead, bringing in the Indeedee, super safe. Corviknight, once again, with a Mirror Armor, is protected from any Intimidates and can start to set up again.
And that Excadrill as well, because it's carrying the Focus Sash, it can come in and kind of sweep up at the end of the game as well. Can afford to take one hit. You know you're always going to be able to hang on, and if you've got Earthquake locked in, then Incineroar and Ursaluna can go down. I think if you're Nils now, you just want to try and get some damage on that Ursaluna to enable the sweeping cleanup of that Earthquake a little bit later on.
Expanding Force, doing a decent chunk. But now Indeedee will be knocked out in return. But yeah, for Nils, it's really all about getting damage on that Ursaluna, because then you can clean up the game with the Excadrill that we know is in the back, waiting for Nils to join the field.
And it now has the free switch in thanks to the Indeedee going down. The Brave Bird really putting Ursaluna in that Earthquake range as well. But honestly, this Corviknight is just fantastic right now. The Hyper Voice comes through, again, does a little bit of damage, but it's nothing that really Corviknight is going to worry about whatsoever. And I think going into Game 2, Giuseppe has to think around this Corviknight. How are you going to counter it?
Yeah, I mean, there's still the option for Giuseppe to go for Terrestrialization. So maybe if you could go for Terra Ghost, take the Earthquake from the Excadrill and then get a Flare Blitz and burn into the Excadrill to KO it through the Focus Sash. Ooh. Or, well, is Psychic Terrain still up? Oh, maybe
no,
maybe with Vacuum Wave you could actually set up a KO in the Excadrill. But even then, I guess the Corviknight could still try and set up with Bulk Up and Roost. So
but I like the fact that Psychic Terrain's gone and pointed out the Focus Sash can be broken. That could be one way to open up an opening, I suppose.
Yeah.
And it's exactly what's happening here. We've got the Ghost Terrestrialization coming through. That's going to give the Incineroar a little bit more defense to play against the Earthquake. And if the Vacuum Wave comes through and gives that little bit of chip, a Flare Blitz could do a huge amount of damage.
Yeah, maybe you would need a critical hit now that the Excadrill has also terrestrialized. So yeah, nice job here on Nils identifying that was an option. Going for a terrestrialization, which works out defensively as well as offensively. Big damage coming out, almost knocking out that Incineroar right away. So yeah, if this is a follow-up Brave Bird, I think this game might just be over this turn.
I mean, it's the safety goggles on here as well, so no berry recovery potential for the Incineroar. Does a significant chunk to the Excadrill, but even if it had taken it down, thanks to the recall, thanks to the fact that the Corviknight's still here with Brave Bird, it was going to be game over. And Nils Dunlop will take game 1.
Yeah, nice play by Nils. Really well positioning there. I think the lead choice looked super passive once again. It is, well, Indeedee and the Corviknight, but it's activating that Psychic Seed right away. And that is exactly the Pokemon that Nils needed in this situation. Especially with a power trip, you know that you can be safe from a Goldango coming in later in the game. And that is usually a strategy that some of these teams that, like the one Giuseppe is running, Goldango is usually the Pokemon that they want to use against Corviknight. But with this power trip innovation, yeah, maybe Nils found a way to flip that matchup on its head.
I like the way as well the Corviknight didn't even need the power trip in this particular match. Yep. Just being able to apply the pressure with using the bulk up, having the Psychic Seed boost as well, just meant that it was a constant threat that Giuseppe had to play around. Even then when the haze came through and Corviknight was effectively neutralized, the amount of damage that it could deal out because it was staying on the field and Giuseppe didn't have a way to deal with it, just meant that Corviknight was such an integral piece on Nils' team. Yes, you had offensive pressure coming through from Tyranitar and the Excadrill, but at the end of the day, you need to knock out all 4 Pokemon to win the match, and Corviknight was a problem.
So,
How do you deal with it? That's my question.
how do you deal with it? Well, Haze was one cute idea. I think it's important to get rid of that Psychic Seed special defense boost to make it easier for those special attackers like the Goldingo and the Ursaluna Blood Moon over on Giuseppe's side to deal with the Corviknight. But one thing that Giuseppe definitely cannot let happen again is switching in the Goldango into a knockoff. So one thing that I'm thinking about is maybe you can use either the Sneasler to force the Tyranitar to show its card a little bit earlier to maybe force a terrestrialization out of it. Maybe that makes it a little bit easier to deal with the Ursaluna Blood Moon's normal type moves. Or maybe you can bring the Clefable and use Redirection to lower the power of Corviknights, or to lower the effectiveness of Corviknight, because of course Clefable is running unaware, so even if that Corviknight gets set up, Brave Bird probably not doing that much. Also Power Trip not very effective, so that also wouldn't do that much damage. So maybe that could be a way to play around that Corviknight. And maybe you could also try and use your Goldango more as a setup Pokemon. So yeah, Clefable and Goldango could be one way to try and get up Nasty Plot. But then you still have to worry about that Excadrill matching the boosts maybe with a Sword Stance and then bypassing the redirection with Earthquake.
I think as well, Clefable being the fairy type is quite nice, considering Corviknight, it is a steel type, but it doesn't have any steel type moves as well, so you don't have to worry about those coming through. You've identified the dark type on Power Trip, obviously not going to be able to do much to the fairy type. Clefable does give it a bit of flexibility, but the question still is, how do you actually KO the Corviknight? You can stop it doing a huge amount of damage, but I think unless Goldengo can get the Nasty Plot out with a Shadow Ball being dealt out to that Corviknight, having got rid of the Psychic Seed boost, that's the only way you're really going to be able to deal big damage to it.
Yeah. I think my suggested pick here would be to try and maybe use Incineroar and Goldingo, use like Fake Out and Nasty Plot or Parting Shot, depending on what comes out of Nils. But that would be something that could work against the Pokemon that Nils chose in the first game. But maybe Giuseppe is also expecting Nils to switch things up, just like he did against Edu, and that is exactly what happens. Giuseppe coming in here once again with that Incineroar and Ursaluna Blood Moon, and on the other side, Nils bringing out two physical attackers. This time, though, it is Sneasler and Excadrill.
I feel like Sneasler's in a great spot now. It can kind of pick where maybe it wants to land that Fake Out, at the same time applying so much pressure with a close combat into either of these opposing Pokemon. If you're Giuseppe now, what are you going to be predicting?
That's a good question. I mean, there is no Terra Ghost on that Sneasler, and it doesn't have Protect. So maybe that is one way to lure in a Fake Out into that slot. Of course, we've seen the Wide Herb activate, so yeah, no Intimidate on that Pokemon either. So just a powerful close combat. It looks really, really threatening and is maybe something that Giuseppe would have to cover. So maybe, yeah, Fake Out into that Ursaluna and just a Sword Stance. That could be one way, but of course then you have to fear a Flare Blitz coming in from that Incineroar. So I think it's a good spot for Nils, but he still has to work for getting an advantage in the game.
And of course, this is top four. The winner of the set will be advancing into the grand final, so the stakes are incredibly high. Sneasler goes for the Fake Out into the Incineroar, stopping it from going for a Fake Out of its very own, as Excadrill uses his opportunity to get the Sword Stance in play. That's going to give a +2 attack boost, but thanks to the Intimidate, will only be at +1.
Yeah, Giuseppe already using Terrestrialization turn 1 to make this Ursaluna safe from any close combat that comes in, but launching back here with a big Blood Moon one-hit KO into the Sneasler. And I just gotta wonder, is it worth it? Was that trade, who was it favoring?
I mean, this is the thing, at least the Sneasler on the field forced the Terrestrialization coming through from that Ursaluna as well, going into that Water Terrestrialization. But losing such an offensive powerhouse can be detrimental. The only advantage here, I think, is you get the Tyranitar in the sands in the sky. Excadrill's going to have a great time.
Absolutely. Terra Flying with the Tyranitar, Earthquake with the Excadrill. There's not really anything that stops this.
No.
Incineroar cannot Terrestrialize. Incineroar probably wants to switch out this turn because you want to be able to Intimidate in one of the upcoming turns. But then, yeah, what do you want to switch in? I mean, there could be the Dragonite probably. With Multiscale, it would actually be able to take both hits. But the Ursaluna, it cannot Protect. And it's going to be close whether the combination of moves will be enough for the knockout here. But if it knocks out, then that's huge for Nils. On the other hand, if Giuseppe is able to take both moves on the Ursaluna Blood Moon and can hit back with like an Earth Power into the Excadrill, putting it into Vacuum Wave KO range, then that would be huge for Giuseppe. So really important to see how that damage roll works out.
Love this flying terrestrialization as well, meaning you will not be hit by your partner's Earthquake that will connect down onto the opposing Ursaluna, do just over a third of damage, and Ursaluna can retaliate with an Earth Power of his very own. Now it's very precarious for Excadrill. In the next turn, it could easily be KO'd.
Yeah, so it's either a pretty fast Ursaluna. Oh, Rock Slide doesn't hit the Dragonite, but at the end of the turn, the Sandstream will still get rid of that multiscale, and also that Ursaluna Blood Moon now has to take a little bit of chip damage. So the Ursaluna is actually a little bit faster than I thought, outspeeding this Tyranitar here. And also it took those attacks really nicely. Of course, Ursaluna naturally has a very high defense stat, but really goes to show that Giuseppe trained it to be really bulky. And now that this Earth Power came in, of course, Excadrill on Nils' side would be weak, or would just be, it could be knocked out by just one hit. Either the Vacuum Wave or the Extreme Speed. But of course, Nils also knows that protecting Excadrill right here.
Yes, and whether Giuseppe's been able to read into it, so far he has done, able to target down that Tyranitar instead of going for any potential onto the Excadrill. 2 come down, 3 is coming through. It is loaded dice. We know there's going to be at least 4, but is there a 5th?
Yeah, and this should be a Blood Moon follow-up, if I had a guess, into the Tyranitar slot, predicting the Protect here on the Excadrill. Let's see, it is coming out, but how much damage is that going to do? Oh wow, that Tyranitar also so bulky. And once again, Rock Slide not connecting with that Dragonite.
This is one lucky little Dragonite. It's not even enough to be able to get the knockout on the water type that is now that Ursaluna. But there will, of course, be the sand going around that will now connect onto that Pokemon and get the knockout.
Yeah, great defensive training here on Tyranitar over on Nils' side, which now also has to take a little bit of Sandstorm damage, though, and barely makes it through the turn. But yeah, not hitting that Dragonite twice in a row. I think the first one, well, there's still multi-scale to reduce the damage, but now the second one definitely would have hit hard. So both Pokemon now on Nils' side are at such low HP, and you just have to wonder, is there an Indeedee in the back to maybe set up the Psychic Terrain to protect against the priority moves? But if that is the case, then yeah, you don't really have a lot of power coming in. I mean, we definitely know that this is not a game where the Corviknight with the Psychic Seed will try to run away with the game, because, well, there is only one more Pokemon remaining for Nils in the back.
And I like their switching as well. The Incineroar can intimidate both these physical attackers. It can apply that fake out pressure, and even if Psychic Terrain does come in, if it's on the Excadrill side, you can still hit the Tyranitar as it's a flying type with that fake out and get the knockout.
Yeah, so exactly, on the flying type Tyranitar, it would not be protected by a potential Psychic Terrain. So yeah, that would be a relatively safe move to go for the fake out in that slot. But yeah, if it's switched into an Indeedee and you were to go for double priority moves, then that could be disastrous for Giuseppe. So you need to be very smart with your targeting here. Even though Nils' Pokemon are at such low HP, well, they're still so threatening. And you can also try and maybe play a little bit defensively, because at the end of the turn, Tyranitar would be knocked out to the Sandstorm chip damage.
Now, if this Excadrill has gone for the Earthquake, that's obviously going to hit its partner Indeedee as well, that has just switched in. But it is setting up that Psychic Terrain. I think this is the right move. Switching out that Tyranitar, enabling that the Incineroar cannot go for the fake out.
Wow.
And it wasn't even going for it anyway. Giuseppe's not falling for it.
Yeah, once again, no priority moves. Earthquake. Incineroar can take it, and now with a double up here, Scale Shot knocking out the Excadrill, getting the boost in speed, and potentially this Incineroar knocking out the Indeedee. That would be great for Giuseppe.
Yes, of course, Dragonite going to take the drop and then the boost that comes through from the Scale Shot. But Incineroar's still free to move. The knockoff will get the KO, and now Tyranitar comes back in. It's only, I think, got about 5 HP remaining. It's going to be gone in a matter of turns.
Yeah, absolutely. Phenomenal targeting here by Giuseppe. Not falling for the trap that Nils has set up with that Indeedee, and not going for any priority moves twice in a row. First, predicting the Protect on the Excadrill, doubling into the Tyranitar, and now once again, not going for any fake out or any extreme speed, but instead taking the knockouts here and not giving Nils any opportunity.
And I think that Giuseppe played this really well, identifying there wasn't the Corviknight here as well. You were really playing around this kind of sand duo and putting them both in a very dangerous spot where you were able to get the damage down, put them in a range of just a priority move. I think shows that he closed out this endgame really well. Yes, the Rockside misses on the Dragonite were unfortunate. The first one, as we've already said, didn't really matter thanks to the multi-scale. But even so, I think the Dragonite would have been in potential to be able to take one of those at least.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, without those misses, I wonder if the Dragonite could have maybe taken them or not. But, well, either way, I think it's going to go to a game 3, so it doesn't really matter, right? What matters is what is ahead of both of these players. And, well, right now, Nils already taking the time, coming up with a plan, and maybe it just has to involve that Corviknight. It worked so well in the first game. I can understand the decision of Nils to not bring it in the second game, but that would also make it just even more predictable, right? Because you won one game with one strategy, it went really well.
Yeah.
Now in the second game, you tried something else. It didn't work at all as Extreme Speed KOs the final Pokemon, and Giuseppe will tie up the series. So yeah, for the third game, what's going to be? Are you going to go with a strategy that worked or with the one that didn't?
You've got to bring back Corviknight, right? I mean, even looking at the Pokemon that Giuseppe brought, yes, we didn't get to see the fourth one, but there wasn't anything revolutionary between games 1 and games 2 for me.
Yeah.
So I feel like if Corviknight had been in that game 2, it would have been in the same situation. How do you get rid of it? And if Nils was able to get a bulk up on it, then it makes it even more difficult for Giuseppe to deal with. I think Corviknight's coming back.
Yeah, I think it was a very smart decision here by Giuseppe to go with the exact same thing, anticipating the switch up by Nils. And Nils didn't want to risk being called out with his Corviknight strategy in the second game. He was ready to switch things up, try to go with a different game plan, but, well, now it didn't work. And now this is really a setback for Nils, because it means that, well, this becomes even more predictable now to bring back the Corviknight in game 3. But is there really an alternative? I don't really see one, because, yeah, as you were saying, Giuseppe didn't really make anything too fancy. He just had very strong Pokemon and yeah, relied on smart damage trades. And it felt like this game Nils didn't have the advantage in the team. And I mean, there is a reason why we're not seeing so many Tyranitar, Excadrill, Indeedee male. But on Giuseppe's side, he's using a lot of the very, very strong Pokemon this format. So naturally, if you just keep on trading damage, eventually Giuseppe's team would come out on top. So Nils has to find a strategy that gives him an advantage here, I feel like.
I think as well, the Tyranitar and Excadrill were kind of led very early on by Nils, so it was very obvious he was committing to that kind of strategy for this game too, and that was something that Giuseppe could just play around straight away. I feel like it's more, if you set up the Excadrill for an endgame sweep, that's when it can really catch you off guard, because it could be a little bit too late to deal with that Focus Sash Excadrill, but Giuseppe was able to deal with that very early on, which meant it was less of a threat as the turns kept going through, and it just meant that Nils was loosening his grip on the match. I love the Indeedee, I have to say. I think Indeedee and Corviknight is a great combination. There is a lot of priority on Giuseppe's side, and he likes to bring those priority using Pokemon. So just being able to have the expanding force, I think is really, really nice. The rest of Indeedee's set, though, I don't think is particularly useful in this match, but a cheeky trick here or there, or even just the expanding force for some good damage, can be something that gives him the momentum while the Corviknight cleans up.
So how are you fitting all these pieces here for Nils? I mean, if you want to bring the Indeedee and the Corviknight, you only have 2 more Pokemon that you can bring. And if it is going to be that Tyranitar and Excadrill, well, then that's the lineup. You're not bringing the Sneasler or the Magmar. And then I think you could be really vulnerable against that Gholdengo. And in the first game, Nils, of course, was able to knock it out on the switch-in, so we didn't really get to see Gholdengo's impact on the match. But I think it could be big. So let's see. We're jumping into game 3.
Shaking things up here, it's going to be Tyranitar and Sneasler coming out front and center for Nils, but Giuseppe tried and tested. It's the Incineroar and the Blood Moon Ursaluna once again.
Okay, so I guess with that, it kind of confirms that, oh well, it doesn't confirm anything, but then maybe Nils once again is relying on this Excadrill-centric game plan. The Tyranitar, nice little switch up. The Sneasler, once again, with the White Herb, is able to be unaffected by that Intimidate and is staring down 2 Pokemon that are weak to close combat. So, just like in game 2, Giuseppe will have to do something about this. And this could be like trying to go for a Fake Out, this could be trying to go for a Terrestrialization, because one play that Nils could make is recall the Tyranitar, bring in the Indeedee, set up the Psychic Terrain so that the Sneasler is unaffected by Fake Out, and then go for a powerful close combat. So that's something that Giuseppe has to play around, and I think that's exactly what he's doing right now.
I like how the Incineroar switches out here, maybe predicting the close combat was going to be the target there, so you're bringing in your flying type to be able to eat up that damage. With the sand on the field anyway, it was going to have its multi-scale broken by switching in, so it doesn't really matter too much if that is the target. Once again, Terrestrialization is forced through on this Ursaluna, going to be able to be the water type, so in case any of that damage dealing potential from Sneasler comes its way, it's going to be able to take those attacks much better.
Yeah, but there is the Fake Out into the Ursaluna that terrestrialized Nice play, and this will give Nils another chance to just go for an attack, and it is that knockoff, ignoring the Incineroar that now switched into Dragonite completely, and now getting rid of that Assault Vest. And now, while Nils doesn't have any special attacks on the field right now, if there is that Indeedee in the back, that would do a sizable chunk of damage now with that Expanding Force. And there we get confirmation. Okay, yeah, so once again, it is that Excadrill and Indeedee, no Corviknight for the game.
That's very interesting, but Nils, I'm sure, has got a plan with this. Maybe trusting in those 4 Pokemon, but changing up the way that he wants to operate them. I mean, the Tyranitar could potentially go for its Terrestrialization here as well, just to make sure that it doesn't have to worry about any of the ground-type attacks that the Ursaluna wants to throw its way. And at the same time, then the Dragonite doesn't really have much pressure on it either.
Yeah, so Dragonite wants to switch out once again. Incineroar could be coming in, and that is what we're seeing now. Without that White Herb, would be able to also intimidate that Sneasler, and now that is a big Intimidate coming out. And this is what we were talking about before the game. Incineroar really good, but also this Earth Power, nice attack here. Of course, Excadrill has that Focus Sash, but yeah, that was a ton of damage on the switch-in.
I honestly really like that play by Giuseppe. You know, not going to go down into that Tyranitar in case it becomes a flying type, and you would get some really good damage onto the opposing Sneasler, even if it had stayed in that turn. The fact that you caught that Excadrill just means that, once again, this strategy that Nils is banking on has been severely weakened early on. Yeah,
and even if that was a Direct Claw with the Incineroar switch-in, now with that Intimidate on the Sneasler, it doesn't do that much damage. Now I think this is even better for Giuseppe, because he has Fake Out available. Of course, now once again, there is this interaction with maybe Indeedee is waiting in the back, so do you really want to go for the Fake Out or not? But, I mean, Nils could also take a risk here with this Excadrill at 1 HP and just say, okay, well, I'm just expecting you not to go for any priority moves, and I'm just like staying in. I'll just go for, let's say, he could Terrestrialize the Tyranitar and just go for an Earthquake, but that would just be so risky.
I would Fake Out, to be honest, because even if there is a switch-in, you know, there's not a lot that Tyranitar is going to be able to do, but Incineroar actually saying, no, I want to Intimidate a little bit later on, even if you Earthquake and bring in him a flying type, so we don't have to worry about that at all. And Excadrill's doing the Tyranitar still on the field without a flying type here, so it's going to have to take almost 50% damage.
Yeah, that's not enough, and wow, this Earth Power Tyranitar, I really wished it would have Terrestrialized this turn. Rock Slide, not enough to get the knockout on the Ursaluna, but maybe with the Sand it is. But you gotta wonder, why did the Excadrill here decide to Earthquake against its own partner? I think that Nils really wanted to play a game where he was saying, okay, either this Incineroar goes for a Fake Out into the Excadrill, then okay, I would go down. But if it doesn't, it would probably go for a parting shot to try and predict this Indeedee switch-in, like Giuseppe has done before. But no, this time it was a hard switch from Giuseppe, so not letting Nils get that Earthquake off. And now as Incineroar comes in once again for another round of Intimidate, Nils' Pokemon are so weak at this point, and they're at such low HP. So, yeah, really well played by Giuseppe up until this point. But, I mean, there's still Rock Slide in there. We still have Iron Head, which also has a chance to flinch. But I think first Nils might have to switch around a little bit just to get rid of those Intimidate drops.
Well, you've got to keep the Excadrill in the game in order to potentially get those flinches through. Incineroar in a position where it could go for the Fake Out, even if something like the Indeedee comes in. Tyranitar's been intimidated multiple times now. It's really not going to be doing too much damage. That could enable the Dragonite to be able to clean up.
Yeah, so big decision time for Nils. Do you want to try and maybe hope for a flinch? Are you expecting a Fake Out to come through this turn? Once again, no priority moves, just like before, but no flinch either. Scale Shot hits, and this will knock out the Tyranitar.
And it could be the last hurrah as well for its partner Excadrill, as Incineroar is yet to move and will be able to find its mark down onto this very exposed 1 HP remaining Excadrill. Dragonite, I think, in a prime position there, getting its knockout and knowing that when the Sneasler comes back in as well, it's going to have potential there.
Yeah, now getting that big double KO means Nils is down to his last 2 Pokemon, his tournament life on the line. This is Game 3, and it looks like Giuseppe has played himself into a nice spot, especially if there is a Goldengo in the back, because with the current last 2 Pokemon remaining for Nils, there's not really anything that could touch a Goldengo at this point.
That's honestly such a great observation, because we saw at the beginning of the game, Giuseppe switch out that Incineroar, maybe worrying that something like a close combat was going to come its way, and with a lot of HP remaining on Incineroar, that could be a great play for Nils. But if a Goldengo appears in that slot being a Ghost type, it's going to do nothing, and that really just showed that Giuseppe has all the pieces of the puzzle he can move around here to be able to close out an endgame.
Yeah.
Nils does have a lot lot of HP, but Ndidi can't do anything to Incineroar, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like, which move do you want to lock yourself into? I mean, you could try and use Trick maybe to get rid of the Choice Scarf, or you could try to lock into Terra Blast. But then, once again, if it is that Goldango in the back, then you would absolutely do no damage to that Goldango. And Giuseppe now going on the defensive this turn, but yeah, if he has Goldango in the back, he might already know how this game is gonna end.
Yeah, Sneasler can't even touch it with the Dire Claw because it's steel type. It's really completely neutralized. So Giuseppe playing through slowly at this point. Close combat is going to come through though and get the knockout on Incineroar, but depending on what's in the back, this game could be wrapped up.
Yeah, this might be the reveal now, which could decide this game. I mean, if it is something like Clefable, then I would give this to Nils. But if it is that Goldango, then this is exactly the Pokemon that Giuseppe needs. And it is that Goldango. This is what Giuseppe knew all along, but of course this is very bad news for Nils.
Yes, you can go for the Expanding Force, so might even get the KO on that Dragonite, do a little bit to the Goldango, but Goldango in a prime position with his Life Orb in particular to make it rain all day long. You don't even have to worry about the Sneasler. It's just going to be able to sit there and not do any damage to Goldango. I think as soon as you remove that Ndidi, it is GG.
It is GG indeed, and well, Terrestrialization was not used that on Nils' side, so why not boost up the damage of Expanding Force just a little bit? And if you can get the knockout on the Dragonite, then you would, well, boost up the damage a little bit, but yeah, with a Choice Scarf, I guess Ndidi would be the fastest. Giuseppe trying to protect the Dragonite knows it's all on that Goldango at this point, but how much can Expanding Force do? It would need to knock out this Goldango right here.
Well, let's see how much it does. About a third of damage. Is going to need a little bit more to be able to get the knockout on this Goldango. And right now, Giuseppe is in a position where, again, you'd have to worry about this Sneasler. You just need to be able to go for some big damage. And what I love, this is interesting. The Nasty Block gets set up so that you can guarantee a double knockout as soon as you get that damage on the board, because indeed he does have full HP.
Yeah. Giuseppe didn't want to take Life Orb Recall this turn. So, I mean, unless you were to predict this Terra Psychic and you wanted to go for a Shadow Ball into that slot, Make It Rain probably wasn't going to be enough for the knockout. So this is the last chance. Expanding Force, single target, has to get the knockout here with a critical hit or else the game is over. It is enough!
It does!
Wow!
Oh,
with a critical hit! Oh my god, he gets the critical hit!
Indeed, he comes through, single target, critical hit, Terra type, Psychic Terrain. Indeed, he pulls it through for Nils, our first finalist here in Lille.
I cannot believe what we are seeing